Good afternoon. Please take your seats, silence your phones, and turn your attention to the screens. Our program is about to begin.
Here in New York City, the Black maternal mortality rate is up to 12 times that of white women. 12 times.
The statistics are staggering. The disparity in care is costing Black women their lives.
Centuries of poverty and marginalization among Indigenous people.
When I saw how so many Indigenous youth like me get left behind, I was like, this is not fair. For me, the answer was robots.
There are 18.4 million children not getting ASIC vaccinations because of the challenges of the last mile transportation. I was shocked, and then I thought there must be a way to solve it.
We are on a mission to eradicate racism and bias from maternity and infant care.
I want to give students robots who wouldn't have them otherwise. It's a lot.
The goal is to create a reliable cooling device to deliver these life-saving vaccines to the people who need them. Even though I know this is the right thing to do, it's just bloody difficult.
Please welcome Hala Hanna, Executive Director, MIT Solve.
Hey! Welcome back, everybody. This was the trailer of our docuseries, The Big Idea, which is made possible with the generous support of our longtime Solve champion, HB. It's great. You should watch it. How are you all feeling? Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. You know, there's this saying that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. True. But I give you 30 solvers who are fixing that. It's impossible to listen to those pitches, one after the other, streams of dreams and hard work, and not feel like, not start to see that world that is more sustainable and prosperous for everybody. This afternoon, we're going to hear from people who share this vision. We'll talk about building resilient, inclusive communities with the Prime Minister of Sierra Leone. We'll hear from a policymaker fighting desertification, if he can make it on time. The traffic is insane. And a scientist fighting sea level rises. And we'll hear from storytellers who are using music, data, map, rap to reclaim narratives and inspire change. And more prize announcements. If you're feeling this afternoon slump, just remember there's still a portion of $1 million on the table. All right, let's get to it.
And now, Alain Richard Donwahi, President, 15th COP of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. Skylar Tibbetts, Associate Professor of Design Research in the Department of Architecture, MIT, and moderator Emily Atkin, Editor-in-Chief, Heated.
Hello, everybody. As you can see, we have one seat that is empty. Alain Richard is on his way. Hopefully he'll be able to... Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Hi. Nice to meet you. We planned that. That was surprise entrance, so to get some excitement going. All right, I'm so excited to be here today and talk about land, which I think is something that, we take for granted sometimes. We need it. We stand on it. We eat from it. It houses all our buildings. And we're going to talk about two sides of the climate crisis and its threat to land. So desertification and sea level rise, both two sides of the climate crisis coin. One strips away land through degradation, and one literally swallows it through rising waters. You both come at this work from very different angles, but the urgency is the same. You're coming at it, Skylar, from a technological angle, whereas Elaine Richard, you're coming from it from an international policy angle. So I'd like to just start by addressing the broader context, making sure everybody understands. Elaine Richard, you've said that there is a lack of understanding of the phenomenon of desertification and its consequences. So can you help the audience understand this phenomenon and how they should think about it?
Yes. Sorry for the delay, but there's too much traffic in New York. Desertification, you see, I'm president of COP15, Desertification COP. Do you know what it is? Do you know? Nobody knows, you see? Everybody knows about climate COP. We talk about climate COP and biodiversity COP. There are three COPs: biodiversity, climate, and desertification. Desertification is a COP on land degradation and droughts. At the beginning of those COPs, it was in 1992 in Brazil when they launched the three COPs. They thought that desertification was only about desert. Sahara Desert, African countries, poor countries. So you don't need to talk about it too much. But in fact, it's not about desert. It's about land degradation. And land can be degraded by agriculture, urbanization, poor land management. And today, desertification is touching 80%, 85% of the countries in the world. In fact, 168 countries are affected by desertification. We talk about drought in Europe, in Portugal, in Spain, in France, in Italy, in Armenia, in China, in the United States, in Brazil, in Australia. We talk about drought everywhere, not only in Africa. So people are looking a little more about the causes and the consequences of desertification and also the solutions. Desertification is at the core, at the root cause of climate change. Because when you have desertification, you have less forest, you have degradation of the biodiversity in the soil, but also you have the scarcity of water resources that is affected by the lack of forest. Because the cycle of water is created by the forest, by the tree. If you don't have the cycle of water, you don't have rains, you don't have winds, so you have climate change. So the root cause of climate change is desertification. So we have to all take care of, look at desertification, understand what it is, and try to find solutions. So that is why desertification is very, very, very important.
Yeah, desertification is not, it's not as, I guess, the poster child of climate change in maybe media coverage as, say, sea level rise is. Maybe, Skylar, you can briefly talk about the problem that you're working on with sea level rise. Maybe there's, I feel like that's maybe a little more known, but how should we be thinking about that?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at sea level rise, we all know coastal cities around the world are facing increased storm action, increased sea level rise, increased erosion. Island nations are facing the same thing, but I think about it as kind of two perspectives. Most people are trying to fight the force of nature, and so the real problem is like, how do you resist increased storms? How do you resist erosion? How do you try to fight sea level rise? How do you outpace that? And then the second one is, let's do land reclamation and more dredging. Let's keep pumping, build land higher, larger. And I think these two issues are really not solutions. Like, you're not going to win by fighting nature. Nature's always going to win. It's going to break down whatever barriers you build. And we can't outpace it by dredging more. We're killing reefs. Dredging is immensely heavy carbon emissions and energy intensive. So these quote unquote solutions are actually making the problem worse, and there's really no solution that every coastal city and island nation is facing. So we need to think about it in a completely different way.
Yeah, and I think I hear this a lot in my reporting, this idea that if we don't completely stop climate change, 100%, reverse everything, then there's little we can do to adapt to any level of worsening climate crisis situation. What are the solutions that you guys are seeing that you're excited about right now on both fronts? And maybe push back on that idea that these problems of desertification and sea level rise are unadaptable. Is it possible to adapt? Wayne?
I hope so. I hope it's possible. I think it's possible to adapt. First of all, we have to recognize that it's a global phenomenon. You cannot solve climate change without solving the rest, you know. So at a political level, we tried, when being president of the COP desertification, we tried to have all presidents of COPs understanding and talk together. So we had a declaration, a joint declaration that we did 2 years ago with the 3 COPs, stressing the fact that we all have to work together. That's one thing. So you have the global understanding that you cannot solve one problem without the other. That's very important. But also we have to raise awareness around the globe, because the politicians only cannot solve the problem, I tell you, really. It's impossible. It's everybody. It's the communities themselves that need to change their ways of life. It's also each of us that needs to change the way of life. I was asked a question about the adaptation. You talked about adaptation. How are the countries from the south will be able to adapt to the climate change, to all those phenomena? But I think it will be more difficult for the people in developed countries to adapt to climate change. You know, in poor countries in Africa, if you have failure of electricity or water shortage, people know how to adapt. Can you do so in New York when you live in the 5th floor, 50 floor, and you have a problem of electricity, shortage of electricity for 1 week? Can you adapt? Or water, can you adapt? It's going to be very difficult. So we have to all be aware that we have to work together to make change. Adapting is compulsory. We have to adapt. But we also need to prevent. It's very important to prevent. And that's when the more developed countries are able to help less developed countries to adapt and to prevent. You know, because with the new technology today, we can know what is going to happen. So we have to adapt in the ways of living, but also in urbanization. I think you are architects, right? So they need to tell us how to build cities, you know.
Tell us how to build. I mean, you're doing some crazy stuff building. Tell us about it.
So yeah, I'm an architect. I teach at MIT, run a lab called the Self-Assembly Lab. And we've been working in the Maldives with a group called Invena on trying to find ways to collaborate with the force of the ocean, so currents and tides, to promote the accumulation of sand. So basically building with nature instead of trying to fight nature. And instead of trying to build by top-down humans, robots, machines, can we let the ocean build with us and for us? And the way that we got onto this is the first time we went to the Maldives, we went out to the sandbar, and I was amazed. You know, they said this emerged over the last month. I mean, it's larger than this room, like serious island that just formed itself. And I started to think that actually the islands are the future of construction, not New York, Miami, Male, you know, whatever human-built city that's a coastal city. That's not the future of the environment, building these concrete jungles. Because the islands grow and they change and they adapt. There was just a New York Times article saying that the Maldives are actually getting bigger. They're outpacing sea level rise naturally. And so these islands are like living organisms. They're growing and changing and adapting. So I think that's a better model. We need to think about how do we build an adaptive system that can grow and change with these forces. And it's the human-made structures that are the problem. It's not the natural ecosystems. So anyway, we're trying to build systems that can grow these islands on their own and tap into that. But the last point you were talking about, we need technology to show us and give us information about this. And so one of the things that we've realized that's a problem is actually just knowing how much your coastline is changing. And so we're trying to build a satellite platform that can monitor and predict changes. Because right now, if you have a beach, you have no idea if you lost or you gained, other than if you go out there and measure it. Like there's no system that'll tell you how is your coastline doing. So we need more information to understand how we take action.
Well, this panel is woefully short. So, yeah, I'm annoyed about it. But I guess just there are so many barriers to these problems, which are fundamentally are injustices. You know, with larger polluters being the ones that and well-developed nations being the ones that cause these problems for mostly underdeveloped regions. So what can people in the audience do to try to move the needle on these issues? Either one of you can start.
You start.
Yeah. Well, I think need to get engaged and collaborate and promote alternative concepts about how we can build. You know, we don't need to just look to the Western history of building cities and civilization. That doesn't necessarily need to be the future, and we can collaborate with these forces that we see as destructive and try to change that perspective. So I think it's mostly like, let's join forces, let's collaborate, let's figure out how we do this and come up with new innovative approaches to building the future of cities.
Yeah, I think there's a need for solidarity. You see, most of the countries that are facing the consequences, negative consequences of climate change are people who don't participate in making them. Okay? So we need more solidarity. Most of the time we talk about money. Okay? To adapt, to change, to prevent, we need money. So people in the South talk about the lack of money. And you see, I've been Minister of Defense in my country for a few years, and responsible for this national security for a few years also. Every time we have a problem of national security, we find the money to solve it. I tell you, very quickly, we find the money to solve it. A few years ago, when the war started with Ukraine, the European Union, in a matter of 1 week, found 100 billion euros to buy weapons. Weapons. You don't grow trees with weapons, I think. So that means that the money is here. So what do we do with it? More solidarity. That's what we need.
Thank you very much. Let's give a round of applause for our panelists. And we're all set for the next one. I don't know who's the next one.
Please welcome Mariella Schocker, violinist, founder and director, Hyams Park Music Academy.
Good afternoon. It's a great honor to be with you today at the MIT Solve Challenge Finals. I come before you as a violinist, but more importantly, as a refugee, someone who has witnessed the darkest sides of injustice and conflict. I fled my home in Syria with nothing but a violin in my hand and a dream in my heart. A dream that someday I could live in a world where every single person, regardless of their background, would have the chance to thrive. That dream once seemed impossible, but I'm here today because of those who believed in me and my unbreakable determination and tenacity to succeed. Death in Syria did not scare me, but watching my dreams fade away did. During the war, music was my only way to express my pain and sorrow at what was happening around me. But in the US, it became my refuge, a beacon of hope that allowed me to use my music and voice to advocate for my fellow students and refugees in need. Music helped me to overcome lots of obstacles. It taught me that nothing can be impossible. Through it, I learned the power of connection, the way the arts can unite us and break boundaries between people and nations, even when the world is tearing itself apart. Today, I stand here as not a Syrian, American, or British citizen, but as a global citizen, driven by a mutual desire to create change. We are here because inequality, climate change, and the lasting effects of the pandemic demand more than hope. They demand actions. We need innovation that transforms hearts and lives, addressing the root causes of our world's troubles rather than merely treating their symptoms. I know firsthand how inequality can strip people of their futures, but I also know that with access to education, resources, and the freedom to dream, human potential is boundless. Today, we gather not just to share ideas, but to create real change, change that reaches the most vulnerable among us. The solutions we develop here have the power to uplift those who have been forgotten, to restore dignity, to pave the way for a future where everyone would have the chance to thrive and flourish. Let us remember that behind every challenge we face are real people with dreams just like ours. It's our responsibility to ensure that those dreams are not lost. Together, we can build a world that's not only equitable and sustainable, but also compassionate and just. We must join hands to create that world, not tomorrow, but today. I am thrilled to perform for you one of my favorite pieces of music. It's an upbeat Middle Eastern folk dance called Longa Shahinaz. I hope one day the sound of music will be much louder than any weapon, and the power of music will help to heal the pain our world has felt and bring us all a platform of peace. Thank you.
And now, Jacqueline Innocent, Senior Vice President, Integrated Programs, Habitat for Humanity International. Lai Guntswaya, Founder, House of Akina. David Senge, Chief Minister, Government of Sierra Leone. And moderator, Caroline Nguyen, Managing Director, Millennium Challenge Corporation.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. The focus of this next panel is resilience. Resilience in infrastructure planning, in crisis response, and what the role and potential is for technology to help frontline communities cope. Look, our modern world puts a lot of stress on our communities, the infrastructure and the systems that weren't quite designed for it. Whether we're talking about climate-strengthened floods or heat waves, but also exogenous shocks from human conflict, from earthquakes, from migration. And so the question here is how to make communities, the people, the infrastructure, the systems, more resilient. I am thrilled to have these three esteemed speakers here. Each of you, in your own ways, is grappling with the question of how to build resilient and prosperous communities that can better withstand the shocks and the disasters of various forms. But before we get started, let me maybe start with an observation to frame the conversation, which is that collectively, we have traditionally been dealing with crises and exogenous shocks in a reactive way, right? Whether we're talking about infrastructure planning or urban planning or service delivery, the extent to which our designs and planning built in scenarios has been variable at best and generally inadequate. That, thankfully, is beginning to change. There have been a lot of conversations about adaptation and resilience in recent years. And with that, there has been an increased understanding that forward planning and can really help reduce the impact of crises on human well-being, on infrastructure, and government pocketbooks, right? Like by some reports, every dollar that you put into crisis planning can actually save you $6 later on in the recovery. So there are a lot of things we can talk about, lots of threads we can pull on for this conversation, but let's start with technology. And let me ask our esteemed panel, what is the role of technology in helping communities become more resilient? In your view, what are the opportunities for innovation and technology to help us move from a reactive posture to a proactive posture? And can you cite some examples?
All right. Who goes first?
Chief Minister.
Look, thank you very much. I think there are fundamental values that speak about resilience and identities. And one of those is just a framework of thinking around inclusion and engagement and participation. Everybody will have seen that the world reached a really important milestone yesterday with the Pact for the Future. But embedded in the Pact for the Future, which came through a long period of negotiation among states, was the Global Digital Compact and the Declaration for the Future Generations. At the core of that, we have to ensure that the technology systems that we deploy work for everyone and work for young people. And yesterday I was expressing, and something I feel like is a question of justice, is not every country in the world is eligible to make money on digital platforms through monetization. So Africa, 1.234 billion people, the median age is 19. Most of Afrobeats, all these creatives, we generate content. But many African countries and many of these young people don't make money from it. People are not going to invest when they can't make money. It's a simple decision for the tech company CEOs, and this is a message to the CEOs and owners of Google, YouTube, TikTok. You should just decide that we're going to allow monetization across the continent for the whole world. The issues of how we deal with the logistics, that's secondary. It's a principled position. If we do that, then we, by nature, when we think about inclusion, I call it radical inclusion, President Bill calls it radical inclusion, stopping at nothing to address these injustices. When we do that, by definition, you have resilience embedded in your solution.
And Chief Minister Singh, if I can stay with you for a minute here, because you talk about radical inclusion. Of course, a lot of your own work has focused on this, right? I wonder if you can share a bit more about the work that you're doing and cite maybe share some of the successes that you might highlight around inclusion.
Particularly with technology. When people think about technology, they think AI, that the people in Africa or in Sierra Leone are not going to use it. We forget that paper too is technology. 2G, SMS, USSD is technology. An example that we built was a USSD system. In the past, there's free quality school education in Sierra Leone, and people take exams, but they can't access their results. It takes $10, or it could take a long period of time. We built a system that meant that anybody, anywhere, could check their child's results for free using USSD and SMS. And that's how technology, through an inclusion framework, worked for everyone. Whether you were in Freetown, or you were in your village in Koindu, or up north, or down south, everybody had access to a powerful solution that will give them an answer immediately that allows them to make effective decisions. When we do this, when we build with the most vulnerable, the poorest, the women, the girls, the people with disabilities, those who are in hard-to-reach remote areas at the back of our mind, then the system works for everybody.
Thank you for that. That's a powerful example. If I could shift gears and turn maybe to Lai, because you've been focusing also on leveraging technology in the humanitarian context, and I wonder if you can share a bit on how you've seen technology reshape the humanitarian response efforts in recent years. In what areas has technology made the biggest differences, and how do you think about and maybe compensate for, right, the unequal access to data in digital systems?
Well, we don't have enough time to talk about compensating for the unequal access, but one of the key things I will point to that was severely disrupted within the humanitarian use case is drones for good. I mean, you know, we could fast forward to today and look at the news, and, you know, drones don't seem to have a good reputation at the moment. But we had that in mind in the early years because we built with the community. And it's quite impressive to be sitting here with you because one of your citizens was the first female graduate of the Drone and Data Academy in Malawi.
She was my employee.
Very good. So, you know, that's a clear example of real impact and building with community from the ground up. If we hadn't done that in the context of drones, I think it would be severe bad news for everyone involved. Community, government, private sector, everybody will literally be sitting uncomfortable right now. So I would point to drones as an example, as an emerging technology that was well embedded within the community and stands the test of time. And when we're talking about Africa, our roads are still being built, most of them. It's going to shape everything in terms of logistics, delivery, health. We're talking about our young people being brought along in terms of economy and startups. Logistics in startups, coffee, being anything at all you can think of requires logistics one way or the other. Drones is really going to disrupt that for Africa in the years to come. We haven't even tipped or scratched the surface of where drone technology will take us. And if I could just jump quickly, now that's logistics. Let's talk about infrastructure, community infrastructure. That's changing as well in the context of the just transition and using renewables to power off-grid solutions that effectively communities can effectively live off-grid. Using renewables and still being able to communicate with data, real-time data. If anyone had a look at my bio, you would see the word deploying a fully decarbonized situational awareness single infrastructure. Lots of words, but what that really means is data can be communicated to and fro, and also safety and community safety can be embedded in one single infrastructure. Now we're talking about economy in terms of data, and we're also talking about safety in the context of young people, women, etc. I'll point to those two things, drones and then the just transition in the context of decarbonized infrastructures that will really make communities incredibly independent and connected.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. keeping with community infrastructure, but shifting a little bit and to say that one of the key elements of resilience in a crisis is, of course, housing and shelter, right? And Jacqueline, wonderful to have you here and from Habitat and for Humanity, and wondering if you can share a little bit about, as with weather shocks and other events, how is Habitat for Humanity innovating to build more resilient housing? And of course, mindful that there are so many more families, right, that simply need shelter as well.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Because one of the challenges we faced, our team has calculated that there's about at least $174 billion deficit in the amount of climate tech investment in the area of housing. And with the 100,000 homes we have to build globally per day to eventually get to a place where our full world population has access to some form of adequate housing, to leave out housing sort of doesn't make sense. So what our Terwilliger Center for Innovation in Housing focuses on is exactly what you said. But we do it by focusing on local solutions. We're really looking for people in the communities to understand the day-to-day challenge and the ways that we can help uplift those. We look to help them with design, we look to help connect them with resources, and then we look to try to bring their work to scale. And whether that is the paint that actually reduces the temperature in a home so that windows aren't open and we can actually reduce the amount of malaria that's going around. For example, whether it is twist blocks, which was actually very much something that came up from the community, and it's this idea of having this much lighter block that I'll oversimplify and say it's almost like a Lego block that anybody can help build. With the majority of the Global South building incrementally, we have to have solutions that actually meet what they need. And I think that's one of the challenges that we have as we try to get less reactive, more proactive. How do we look more at the Global South, the area that's most susceptible to the effects of what we've done to the planet, but also they're not getting the resources to actually adapt. When we look at the amount of money going to adaptation for vulnerable communities, when we look at the amount of money going to adaptation for the Global South, and then when we look at money going to housing, it's just really small. And I'll close by just sharing a little bit. There's also a whole bunch of other benefits. So one of the things we're doing is focusing on the over 1 billion people around the world who are living in informal settlements. And our team has found through research that this is what happens when you do a little bit of upgrading in those areas. You get a 4% increase in life expectancy, which is on average about 2.4 years. You actually see a 28% increase in the years of schooling of their children, which again affects the ability for communities to adapt some of these technology coming their way. We see a 10.5% increase in economic growth for that community, general region, sometimes country. And you save over 730,000 lives, and this is annually. And then you actually have 41.6 million more children in school. Amazing. That's almost 1 out of 6 out of our children that are school age in the world, just because we took the time to focus some of these resources that we've been talking about on the solutions of those who are most vulnerable and actually need it the most.
Amazing. That's amazing, and so important to think about the local context, what is necessary to scale things up and be responsive to the local community that is actually needing the solutions. We are woefully out of time, and so, which is very unfortunate, but let me maybe just close by thanking the panel and each of you for the amazing and important work that you're doing, and please join me in thanking our panel.
Well done. Thank you. That's fantastic. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Very sharp. You good?
Thank you. Yes.
Please welcome back Hala Hanna, Executive Director, MIT Solve.
All right, it's prize time. Are you ready? Yeah. I want to bring him up here. Our good friends, our GSR Foundation, could not be with us in person today. So I have the immense pleasure of standing in for them and delivering good news on their behalf. GSR Foundation is an independent charity founded by GSR, which is a leading cryptocurrency trading firm. The foundation seeks to advance education, promote equality of opportunity, and contribute to a sustainable world. GSR Foundation and MIT Solve have been working together since 2021 to select and support innovative solver teams that help us envision a better world. This year, the GSR Foundation Prize will be awarded to 3 teams using technology in an innovative way to address the pressing issues in their communities. After much deliberation, GSR Foundation Prize is awarded to Musa, SXD, and Yeti Confetti for Refugees. If you can come up. Congratulations.
Congrats.
And now, Nate Angel, Senior Advisor, Mortgage Family Foundation.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure. It's very humbling to be on this stage after seeing everybody else that's been here before me. So thanks for having me. And congratulations to all the Solver teams and all you've achieved. We know that today is just the beginning. So I'm delighted to represent the Mortgage Family Foundation, which is committed to transforming communities through big investment and big ideas. The foundation has been bringing together sector leaders and different perspectives to foster innovation, disruption, and change to result in systematic changes for communities. Because of this alignment, we have collaborated with MIT Solve to support solver teams through the Mortgage Foundation AI Innovation Prize, or MFFAIIP. That acronym was not approved by anybody. I just made that up. We're going to change it. But after our deliberation, we thought it made the most sense to support innovation, disruption, and transformation with this gift. We're thrilled to award the Mortgage Family Foundation AI Innovation Prize to the Solver team, Just Value. Please come join me on stage to accept your award. Congratulations,
so much.
of course,
What a
yes.
tremendous coaching you have.
And we're gonna look right there. Of course, congrats again.
Please welcome Elizabeth McGovern, Trustee Patrick J. McGovern Foundation, and Founder and Executive Director, WEMA International.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's really a joy and an honor to be here with all of you today. I am so inspired every year with these solver teams, this incredibly passionate community, and the MIT team does an amazing job. I just really want to acknowledge all of them. Yay, MIT team, the MIT Solve team. So, as the voice of God said, my name is Elizabeth McGovern, and I am a trustee of the Patrick J. McGovern Foundation. We are a 21st global philanthropy committed to advancing AI and data science to create a more thriving, equitable, and sustainable world. So this is actually our 7th year supporting MIT Solve. Yes, lucky 7. Our 7th year for the supporting MIT Solve through the AI for Humanity Prize. And this can be given across any of the challenges. We're challenge agnostic, but it's really for those teams that are leveraging AI or machine learning or using data science as part of their solution. And every year, I mean, the competition is quite fierce. We had dozens and dozens of applicants, and we had a great panel. And after much deliberation and debate, we finally settled on 5, which we could have awarded everybody. So the 5 are Thrive Link. Please come on up. Woo-woo. Just Value. Consultation Corral. Consultation Corral. Okay. SXP. And last but certainly not least, who knew? Okay, I get in the middle. Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations. Great job. So great. Nice job. Congratulations. So I'm going to give you a hug too because you did such an amazing.
So I was, congrats, really, that was awesome. Well done, well done. And if you weren't one of the prize recipients for this time, just remember, once a solver, always a solver. This will continue, and there are always prizes and more opportunities for support. But I was mentioning this morning that we work with various organizations to design and launch customized challenges, which allow us to find, vet, support innovators that address the specific issues that would achieve the organization's social impact goals. Whether it's solutions that improve care for patients with rare diseases with Amgen, that use AI to measure learning outcomes with the Gates Foundation, or that support women and girls in STEM with Tiger Global. So on the next panel, we're going to hear about the work that we are doing with HPE Foundation and the Anti-Slavery Collective on such a custom challenge, finding solutions that improve and scale resources for survivors of modern slavery. Thank you.
And now, Taina Bien-Aimé, Executive Director, Coalition Against Trafficking in Women. Jason Newman, Vice President, Corporate Affairs, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. Sarah Woodcock, CEO, The Anti-Slavery Collective. And moderator, Kara Tabachnik, News Editor, CBS News, and Director, Journalism Center on Global Trafficking.
Wow. Good afternoon, everybody. We're here at sort of the end of an incredibly information-packed day, and we're about to bring you a little bit more. I want to start first to orient everybody to kind of understand a little bit more what we mean when we talk about modern slavery and human trafficking. So I'm going to open it up with Sarah. If you can tell us a little bit, a definition, very brief, about what modern slavery is and what people should know about it. And then we'll move to Taina. We'll talk about human trafficking.
Thank you. So modern slavery, first thing to understand is it's an umbrella term. So it describes a variety of practices that involve the extreme exploitation of people, exploitation of their bodies, of their labor, and it's through deception, it's through coercion, and it's through force. And I think obviously there are people far away from here who are working in mines, in brick kilns, picking cocoa, but there are also people here in the US, in the UK, who are working in homes, who are working in car washes, who are working in nail salons. So it's really a big definition.
Right, and you hear that a lot of times interchangeably with trafficking, and so it's easy to confuse both the terms. So can you just bring us a little bit further, Taina, into what trafficking is, what it means, and what we can understand about it, and a little bit about how it does differ, if at all, from modern slavery.
Well, hi, everybody, and thank you so much for being here, and it's an honor for me to be here. So we base the definition of human trafficking on international law, so There's an international legal instrument called the Plenary Protocol or the UN Protocol. It has a longer name, which I'll spare you. But it is the internationally recognized definition of human trafficking, and it's basically anyone who entices, transfers, harbors someone. So the means by which people traffic are very broad, and then they traffic them for certain forms of exploitation, including labor, sexual exploitation, organ removal, slavery, slavery-like practices, and servitude. So slavery is just one of the many forms of exploitation. What's also very important, over 190 countries have ratified the Plenary Protocol, so that law should be incorporated in every country's laws, which is not the case, domestic laws, including the United States. Like, we don't meet the international legal standards of human trafficking. And also, what's really important is consent is irrelevant to one's exploitation. So I'll leave it at that.
Right. So just to kind of, just one more point about consent. So it is irrelevant to exploitation. Can you kind of unpack that a little bit for our audience? We've seen that, I don't know, maybe this week in a very large case here in New York, which we discussed about. And I think consent is a very confusing term for a lot of people. So what do you mean by it is not relevant to whether you've been trafficked or not?
So, I mean, the example we use often is, let's say you're a woman in Ukraine and you're looking for a job and you see an ad in New York to be either a restaurant hostess or even dance in a strip club. You're just like, oh, I can dance. That's fine. I will sign up because I'm in dire need of money. And then you get to New York City and you are then sold repeatedly, raped repeatedly. But so someone would say, well, you consented to this, like you knew you were going to work in a strip club and you should have known that this was what was going to happen, but under international law, it's irrelevant. Like, you can't, and it's also a human rights principle, like you cannot consent to your own exploitation. You can't consent to a human rights violation that is being done against you. And so I think that's really...
Right. So it makes it very tricky, let's say, for the person that wants to understand this or get involved in it. It makes it tricky for even people that are working within the industry, right, to really know the scope and to understand really how this permeates our society. So one of the solutions or tools that we always turn to is technology. Jason, I'd love for you to pick up a little bit on how HP has worked with technology or thought about technology as a tool or a solution to understanding modern slavery and human trafficking.
Sure, and just to start, I want to say a quick thank you to MIT Solve and the Anti-Slavery Collective, because the partnership on this challenge has been truly outstanding, and the last 3 months have been very inspirational for me personally, and I'm looking forward to kind of the next steps. As we look at technology, as a technology company, obviously we feel that technology can be used in very innovative ways to solve some of society's most pressing challenges. And that's obviously very true for the issue of modern slavery. There's a lot of areas of need within this issue, obviously, and I think as we were starting to think about this challenge, we really started to hone in on how we're providing support to survivors as a key area, because we thought it was a ripe area for where technology could be a disruptor and really improve the ability and the support that we're providing to survivors. As many of you probably know, survivors are often having difficulty getting access to key services, legal, financial, employment, obviously a huge one, health, emotional support. And if there's areas, one area where technology is really good is to be a connector, right? And if done in the right way, this was an area where we thought we could really add some support and provide better support on the ground to survivors. And I think when we make the announcement here in a few short minutes, I would encourage all of you to go look at each of these, because they're all doing some really innovative stuff in terms of really helping survivors and how you can use technology to do that. So there's obviously many other areas of need and other ways that technology can be used, but that's really what we focused in on here in this challenge.
So besides the solvers, who have, of course, been doing amazing, innovative things and ways to tackle this problem, is there other technology that has come into your guys' purview that you could talk about that has been helpful? One of the things that you do run into, and I run into as a journalist all the time, is data. How do you collect it? How do you know the data is good? How do you clean it? How do you code it? It helps with so many things within this world. So if you could talk quickly, maybe starting with Sarah, and then to Taina, and then to you, Jason, about data and how you collect it, and some of the technology that has maybe helped you do that.
I mean, data is a huge challenge in this area because human trafficking is by nature illegal, secretive, and hidden. So, data we do have are just based on estimates, so it's a real challenge, but there are incredibly interesting data sets that exist all over there. There's data sets from law enforcement, from border officials, there's data sets from people who work in safe houses who are collecting software information, and crucially, actually, I think there's corporates who are working with supply chain accountability and visibility organizations, and they're also collecting data, but it's just how do we get to a space where we're sharing incredibly sensitive data, and how do we...
Sharing is caring.
Yeah.
Taina?
So I'm not a technologist, so I'm in awe of everyone in this room who is. And it was really extraordinary to read the applications from the MIT Solve group of people, just incredible. Traffickers are unfortunately 800 yards ahead of law enforcement and the rest of us in the use of technology. I mean, it is the single most effective way. They traffic and exploit people. But having said that, the innovation, we also have to remember, like, our understanding of human trafficking, even from a legal perspective, is only 20 years old. So we're really at the very beginning of understanding and trying to find solutions on how to address it. And I do think, just from the reading, I was honored to be one of the judges, and just the vision of seeing how important it is for survivors to tell their stories, because until recently, like, we didn't know who survivors were or how they could connect to each other. But the challenge is, as we mentioned, is that we are talking about detected victims. So right now, there's only like 1% of the population of detected traffic victims who actually get to services. So that's the magnitude of the problem. But
has anything helped you? Have you collect information about the survivors? Any particular technology, or is it more you're really dealing one by one in the human,
So, we focus primarily on sex trafficking, and so sex trafficking, like labor trafficking, it operates like a market, like any other market. Supply, demand, the incentive for profit. So we've had the opportunity to talk to technologists who actually look at the demand. So how do you attract, within the context of sex trafficking, like, who creates the market? And it's the demand, it's sex buyers. And so how do you capture them before they do the harm? And so that has been very, very exciting. And there's one app in particular that's called Street Grace, but hopefully there'll be a lot more innovative apps to help.
Solvers take note. Jason, can you tell us about any interesting technology that's come across your...
I think data is a key challenge for us, and I think it's going to be a big focus for us going forward. As Sarah said, there is a lot of data out there, but it's actually siloed in different entities within corporations, within governments, nonprofit organizations, research institutions, et cetera. We currently use estimates, to decide to figure out how much is out there, right? But we still kind of lack a clear and measurable kind of a measurement framework to tell us how much is out there, where is it happening, and how do we know if we're making progress. One of the key things we're really focused on is how do we know that what we're doing is making an impact, right? And until we can kind of get to the data and really understand where it's happening and what is happening, we won't know if what we're doing is actually having an impact and when we're solving for the real need. And so I think that's one of the key things we're going to be looking at over the next year or so is how we can do that. And it does come down to figuring out how to share data in a way that protects privacy and other related concerns, but allows for technology like AI and machine learning to analyze some of that data in a way that can help us get a better picture. I think one of the things we need to do is to shine a light on this problem. I think data can help us shine that light if we do it in the right way and inspire people to action.
Yeah, it's going to be very tricky to get all those different organizations to talk to each other, especially ones that come from the law enforcement background where the data is protected and they certainly don't want to be free with it. So anybody that really likes a very tough problem, here it is. But we can all agree the scope is tremendous. Is that what you're seeing on the ground? Or talk a little bit about some of the stories you've seen on the ground that help cement the size of the problem.
Well, I think human trafficking it's part of our culture, which is also why it's so difficult to detect. So in labor trafficking, it could be the person who is doing your nails, or it could be the busboy in the restaurant, or the person who's sewing your clothes. For sex trafficking, we are in a culture that normalizes, sexualizes, commodifies human beings. Within the sex trade, we have, the whole system of prostitution and pornography. So it's very, very difficult for us to see it.
So let's not end on a low note. I don't know, time got away from me really quickly, so maybe let's just go with the three of you, starting with Sarah to the end. Just say one thing that has inspired you that you've seen in the last, in your work within this field.
So I'm particularly interested as an organization work on forced labor, and I think the innovations that are happening with corporates who are being driven by legislation to be much more thoughtful about their supply chains, I think is really going to shift things.
Supply chains and corporations, it's something they have to think about. Jason?
One of the things that really inspired me is the fact that we had 70 people and organizations apply for this challenge. And the fact that there is an ecosystem out there like that working on this issue and trying to address it is very inspiring to me. And, we want to...
More people solving this problem.
Exactly.
Solvers. Diana?
For me, it's just the survivors. The more we hear from them, they are really the solution to this issue.
It takes one person to make the change, right? Okay, so that brings us to the end of our discussion. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and thank you to the panelists for the wonderful work that they are doing. It is really appreciated. And we are going to hand it over to Sarah and Jason.
All right. So coming off that great panel discussion, we are thrilled to take a moment to update you all with some very exciting news. After much deliberation, we're very excited to say that we've selected 5 winners of the Supporting Survivors of Modern Slavery Challenge that we're ready to announce now, and we'll be awarding a total of $300,000 to support their work. Without further ado, our 3 runner-up prize winners receiving $50,000 each are HT Fusion Center,
Woo!
Alight, and Story mobile app. And I believe Jessica is in the room.
And we have 2 grand prize winners receiving $75,000 each, and they are Everfree and Golden Dreams. So I want to thank the HP Foundation and MIT Solve for our collaboration to launch this challenge. And we look forward to working with all of these teams to scale the impact. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent.
Please welcome Fatou Mandiang Diatta, alias Sister Fa, singer and activist for child protection.
Thank you. They asked me outside if I can success to make you sing. I say, let's see. The German people are more serious, but I usually success to do so. Then we're gonna try together, okay? It's just a refrain. Don't be scared. It's going to be in Wolof. When I say, ayo, ayo, le, you say, ah, faibaji. Just like, not like in the church, but a little bit like live, you see? We're going to try. Ayo, ayo, le. Ayo, ayo, le. Ah, faibaji. Ayo, ayo, le. Ah, faibaji. Beautiful. Daniela, did you hear this? Let's go. Merci.
Si mounounga sur la bébé, hey, hey, Joji pare mounouri boral, ah, fay baji. Si mounounga sur la bébé, hey, hey, Joji pare mounouri boral, ah, fay baji. Ayo, ayo, le, ah, fay baji.
Ayo, ayo, le.
Ah, fay baji.
Ayo, ayo, le.
Ah, fay baji.
Beautiful. Ayo, ayo, le.
Ah, fay baji.
Yeah.
Mbajali baju fak, mbagena lil bulago bafege. Ali fubat, fubat fololal, fara atemit, jambu toro wol, nuragumit, ati amumit, sambo sambo, asukaten, urambeno. Urambeno.
Ready? Again?
Ayo, ayo, le. Ah, fay baji.
Ayo, ayo, le.
Ah, fay baji.
Ayo, ayo, le.
Ah, fay baji.
Ayo, ayo, le.
Ah, fay baji.
Yeah.
Apurumbujam, hamatul, fumujam, disabari, eninonete. Lega sontenoro, mumi ale habuto hiya, abuto na che, sontenalil, alalu bajalil, bule holal, ubayalil, alalu bajalil, ayo ayo li, ah fay baji, ayo ayo li, ah fay baji, ayo ayo li, ah fay baji.
Ayo, ayo, li.
Ah, fay baji.
L'enfant est un fruit du cœur, il est un des myrtes du paradis. N'est point de nôtre celui qui s'en sert pour son gagne-pain ou pour acheter des radis. Alayhi salatu wassalam disait, chacun d'entre vous est un berger, et chaque berger rendra compte au sujet de son troupeau. Il disait, n'éduquez point vos enfants de la même façon dont vous êtes éduqués, car ils appartiennent à une génération qui n'est pas la vôtre.
Qui n'est pas la vôtre. Big go. Ayo, ayo, li.
Ah, fay baji.
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 Again. Ayo, ayo, li. Ayo, ayo, li. Beautiful, as you can hear, it's a song to make a child sleep, to just reassure, to let him feel good, close to her mom. I can say with security. Thanks a lot for singing with me. Please, a round of applause for yourself. Merci. Thank you.
Now, joining Sister Fa on stage are Nick Okafor, founder, executive director, Trouble & Co., Trisha Wang, co-founder, Sudden Compass, and moderator Rishana Bide, organizational psychologist.
Wow, what an absolute treat for us to close out the day. Congratulations to all who pitched and won, and to follow this wonderful musical performance from Sister Fa. Thank you again, Sister Fa. This is such a great way for us to kick off our short conversation, but meaningful conversation about storytelling. And For generations, centuries, millennia, humans have been sharing stories in many ways in order to make change and to engage stakeholders. And now we can do it with technology and data, and all three of our panelists are going to be sharing how they bring stories to life through music and other ways. So let me start with you, Trisha. Tell us what is your story of what brought you as a storyteller?
Well, I noticed, I had the privilege of actually growing up in the rise of big data. I literally witnessed the rise of it. I know a lot of people have been born into as if AI and big data has always been everywhere, but I literally saw before my eyes the digitization of our humanity. So I witnessed life analog and then moving into digital, our digitalness. And what I realized in the process was that there was this assumption that people thought that the more data, the more quantitative data that we had about people, the better we would understand them. And I also had hopes for that too. But then I realized the opposite was happening when I was working in the public sector, when I was working inside nonprofits or working in communities, building tech centers, or whether I was working in private sector, I saw the same thing happening, whether it was in tech companies, so that more quantitative data that was being asked for, and the more quantitative data that people had, the more value we placed in the measurement of the data, and the more humanity it took away from people. So I witnessed the rise of big data and the decrease of our own personhood. And slowly over the last 10 years, the big question that's been driving my work, whether I'm in the public sector or private sector or writing more publicly about my analysis, is that somehow, for some reason, we move from being people to being users. And we normalize that. That became a standard way of talking, like, oh, what are we going to do for the user? And we use that language across all industries. And so I think what has really driven my life's work is really to understand what happens when we start to treat people as users, when we have pre-quantitative definitions that, when you treat people as users, you're treating them as something that is functional for the institution, right? But it means you're treating them less human, and it means you can serve them less well. And so whether I'm working with companies or nonprofits or startups, my goal is always to help people figure out how do you not only use the big data, because I'm not saying don't use quantitative, you need the numbers, but how do you make sure you do that in a way that also brings in what I call the thick data, which is just me rebranding qualitative data to make it as sexy and cool as big data. So I'm you need the big data and the thick data, and you need to bring it together, because at every point then you can make sure, is this decision moving me closer or away from humanity? And if your decision-making input is only quantitative, and that's where there's an issue. So I'm always coaching leaders and founders to be you have to have the qualitative. You have to learn how to always keep talking to people and listening to people.
Santa, big data to thick data. Is that with two C's? Can I?
Yes, actually, yes.
Coined here now.
Yes. We're going to come back and hear about how you extract stories using data. Thank you so much, Trisha, for being with us. Sister Fa, I would like to ask you, what brought you here as a storyteller and clearly a beautiful musician?
Yes, I think is to share with you how I use music to promote human rights, to talk about child protection and very taboo subjects like female genital mutilation, early marriage, and I can just say base gender violence. Where I come from in Casamance, the region is between Gambia and Guinea-Conakry. There, female genital mutilation is quite a social norm. It's very normal. And I was asking myself, how can I share my stories with my communities without hurting them? How can I convince the women who perform FGM? How can I talk to the religious people? How can I engage the young generation to really take decision and know that female genital cutting is something negative? Then someone say music start where the language stop. I said to myself, okay, I'm quite very well placed to confirm this. And I use my music to promote human rights. I work in school, I work in the hospital. I try really through painting in Calabash, through slam, through music, hip-hop music, to really talk about those issues that have really a very negative sense in our communities. Living 20 years in Germany and going back in Senegal and starting to talk about women's rights was not really something that the communities like. They was calling me the black white woman who come back just to disturb people. Then now she's emancipated, you see? Then for me, yes, music is quite very essential and very strong weapon to tackle issue like gender transformation, because through music I teach the young generation to respect the diversity, to respect each person, what is his choice for his own life. And yes, and it's really working a lot.
Sistafa, thank you, and we'll talk more with you in a moment as well. But let's hear then from our third panelist, Nick.
Yeah, so I can't tell the story of me without talking about my parents. And so my dad was a public service engineer. My mom used to be a math teacher. So it's no surprise I found my purpose teaching folks how to innovate for social change. And going through that, I saw, I wanted to nerd out about science, but I also wanted to help people. And as I was trying to figure out how do I do so, I saw really unnecessary divides, right? I would go into one classroom and learn engineering, design, how to build really cool stuff, but with people who were so separate and divorced from the problems that they said that were important. Then I'd go into my development and sociology classes to think through the intricacies of these issues. But then we were missing the skills. And so when I went into the workforce, I saw the output of those divides, right? Technologists weren't trained in the ethics of the problems they wanted to tackle. And advocates were pushed away from these technical skills. And so that's what brought me here in Solve. I started a group called Trouble & Co. We push youth to think through data design and tech to solve different challenges. And so I was actually on the stage last year as a solver. So it's kind of surreal to be here today. And so super grateful for Solve. I put in an application, I almost didn't. So really glad I did. And they believed in my mission and the ways that we're using data to unearth local community stories through student voice.
And can you talk about the Mapping Justice project?
Of course. And so through Trouble & Co., we're really thinking about how do we bridge these worlds of STEM, civics, and student voice. Through Mapping Justice, students are getting a crash course in GIS, or Geographic Information Systems, a great way to visualize data, tell stories, both quantitative and qualitative, diving into thick data, if I were going into that. Yes. But so in thinking about this program, it's 3 different parts. One, they're learning technical skills. You have to learn how to build. We're thinking about how to dive into data and research and ask really hard questions. But then we dive into the missing curriculum within computing. We're thinking about responsible tech, ethical AI, what should and shouldn't the robots do with our private data, engaging in these conversations that are really critical to make those technologists think about that. And then they innovate. They think through our own big ideas, our own wicked problems, and figure out how might my exploration in these issues that are so tied to me, things that I see or experience, how does that become my compass throughout STEM and guide my work in data science? And so students are exploring all of these issues that they care about as they're learning these technical skills for the future.
I love the image of a map, Mapping Justice, and you use the word compass, and that's your company, right, Trisha, is around compass.
Sudden Compass.
Sudden Compass, and part of what I want to dive into, we have 5 more minutes left, and I think what would be really great is to hear how to make these stories compelling. So how do you do that, Trisha, with the data?
Well, look, a lot of the work I do is often invisible. It's with decision makers, people making, really trying to affect infrastructural change. So it's not very public. It's often invisible work. And what's really hard is, when you're that up high in an organization, and if you're a founder, you're going to find out very quickly, especially newbie founders, is that very quickly you become farther and farther removed from your people, your customers, your patients, because the more and more you're focusing on scaling and building out the product and getting more funding, you have to hire more people to go do the actual work. And so if you see that in a large company, the people who are often most closest to the problems are the people who often are paid less. They have, more junior titles, and the people who know the least about the people are actually very up high. And so there's a total disconnect in how information flows. And, the work I do to try and get companies to bridge that is to really coach decision makers to say, you cannot think that the quantitative data is more useful. And so really it's training companies and this is the reaction I get oftentimes. People are like, no, I don't want to go talk to people. But you have to go talk to people, okay?
At all costs.
Yes, at all costs. And the companies that are always in touch and stay, and it doesn't matter of what size, is that you will lose your compass, you will lose your sight, you will lose sight of your vision and your goal very quickly if you disconnect from people. And so you really have to have that as your center goal. And so that's why you need to always make sure that you're not led by technological solutionism, which is so easy, in this world where we think having more data, having more technology will suddenly make your product work. For you to actually find the right product market fit, you have to be connected, and that means always having the human voice. And I actually think in the age of AI, the people who will have those skills will it'll be rarer, and it'll be harder, and it'll be a unique skill to have in the labor market.
Thank you. Thank you. That was, you've moved us. So music moves us as well. Can you talk about, especially globally, Sister Fa, from Germany to Senegal, how do you engage people?
Yes, I think for me it was not easy at all because I was supposed to tell my story first. And like with the guitar, it was a kind of like re-traumatization. I was remembering all details from my own female genital cutting, but I was believing that through hip-hop is like a music of revendication, that I can definitely use that kind of music to really talk to the young people without hurting their sensibility and try to let them know that what I'm talking is for you, it's not really for me. But the problem is like female genital cutting was very complicated to tackle in my community without using music, because culturally in the Jola community and also in the Mandinka community, music is through everything. When someone is born, it's about music. When you passed away, it's about music. In your marriage, it's also about singing and also music. Then I tried to talk with those women who's like FGM performing, and I just found out that it have also with power have also with power to do. And then it's like women who's like leaders, they have something to say. I said to myself, okay, you know what? Through those music they are using, I will tell them that maybe we can try to find something alternative rite, that we're going to stop FGM, and then we're going to use music, we're going to use something very specific and something very symbolic at the place of the FGM. And after 20 years for the initiation ceremony, all girls, even those one born in the US, can participate in the initiation ceremonies because there is no pain. And they say, okay, do you know about this? I say, yes. Then they say in French, "A beau menteur vient de loin." It's like when you don't say something clear, you have to bring your witness very far away. Then I invite women from Mali, and then we have some session in Dakar, and then we went to the villages, and they share with the ladies like, yes, we can create something symbolic, and then stop FGM, and continue with the initiation with a lot of songs and things like this, and it's really working now.
Wow, are there any unexpected stakeholders or people that have responded to your music in addition to the women you've engaged?
Yes, I work with the canton of Geneva. It's like the city of Geneva in Switzerland. I work also with Iamane Swiss and the La Chaîne du Bonheur. They are the one who's like funding the project. We are in 21 villages in the south of Senegal, between Senegal, Gambia, and Guinea. And yes, I'm going again until 2026. I was telling my colleague in the room, like, I'm really struggling to finish my album since 3 years. I'm like in a labyrinth with this project of child protection. Maybe I need my self-help. just really to focus also a little bit on my music. But yes, we have support. We are really working, and the communities are answering. We are not talking for them. We are training them and giving them the power to do the work themselves.
Thank you so much. Yeah, the empowerment. And we have just a little bit of time for our last question. So I'd love to bring it back to our solver. What parting message might you have, having been now 1 year out, for how we can bring stories in a compelling way, the way our other panelists have?
Absolutely. So I think a lot about the ways that we cede power, the ways that we ask questions, the ways that we welcome dissent, causing good trouble. And I think about our youth and the ways that in our programs we get to really just get them to ask about what's going on in their community. I think about some of our programs that happen in Florida where they recognize, hey, like I feel like my family's being displaced due to climate change, and this concept of climate gentrification is happening. And how might data science be a way that affirms that real lived experience, but helps them map what could be possible? Or work in Hawaii where they're thinking through this disaster just happened in Lahaina. What is happening there? How is that actually inviting disaster capitalism to engage in this work? And so we're asking questions and we're giving voice to students to really emphasize that. And then the last point I want to mention, I was talking with the solver earlier today, and we're talking about, the woes of starting up a new organization and some of the challenges. And he joked saying maybe we should call it mistake labs because, we have a lot of lessons and you learn as a startup what to do and what not to do. And we were joking, but in a way that kind of invited this opportunity to fail fast and to dive into this work. And so as we're ceding power, and I think about the ways that we're providing a voice for students, I want to let them fail. I want to let them make mistakes, but in ways that are incredibly impactful and reflective. And so in what ways are we actually ceding power for youth to dictate their own future and reshape their own communities? And what role can we provide in providing education, resources, opportunities, a voice to actually do that work? And so welcome here at Mistake Labs, and I'm ready, excited to cause some good trouble.
Mistake Labs, well, a lot to be learned from creativity and this kind of ability to turn setbacks into beautiful things. So thank you so much to our panelists, Sister Fa, Nick, and Trisha. Thank you all.
Thank you. Merci.
Please once again welcome Hala Hanna, Executive Director, MIT Solve.
Hello. Oh, thank you so much for all of our speakers for bringing us voices from so many places with so many important messages. It's now time for the thank yous. Solvers, your presence here is a promise for the people that you serve and the communities that you represent, that they're not forgotten, that they matter. It's also a promise to you that you're not alone and that you're seen. So there is a community of champions, both here and at MIT, who will lift you up. Thank you. To our judges and applicants, to our speakers, artists, moderators, thank you for motivating us. To our supporters, you make all of this work possible. Thank you for your trust. Many of you have asked how you can help Solve, my favorite question. If, like us, you want to drive innovation to solve world challenges, working with Solve is an answer. Whether through launching a prize, championing an area of impact, or creating your own challenge. Find any member of Team Solve and we'll tell you more. Speaking of Team Solve, thank you, thank you. You are incredible. You make everything just fun and easy. Thank you. Let me manifest for a minute. The future. We believe in a future where technology doesn't divide us or blow us up, but connect us. Where the quietest, most vulnerable voices are just as heard as the loud ones. Where every person, no matter where they're born, gets the opportunity to thrive. And we believe we are active participants in what the future will look like. This room the future is being built by the innovators in the room today and by all of you as you support their journey. Friends, this is not an end, this is the beginning. Actually, there's a word in Arabic that means both hello and goodbye. It's salam, which means peace. And as Alain Richard said, you can't grow trees with weapons. So thank you and salam. Thank you.